Hello everybody, it's Justin with Shock Therapy, and we just got back from the Baja 500 pre-run where we were able to run our Wildcat XX. So this is our in-depth review of everything that we've found by driving this Wildcat XX. So that everybody knows what we actually put the car through, we pre-ran the Baja 500 twice. That course, especially this year, was one of the most brutal courses in history for the 500. We went through every single terrain imaginable, so no matter what part of the country that you might live in, you can understand that we went through that terrain that you are running yourself. We saw rocks, goat trail, super slow, low gear, hard crawling terrain. We went underwater, at the beach, in the sand, through the whoops, 1, 2 foot, 3 foot whoops, and 4 foot whoops that nothing goes through. We saw that. We ran through silt beds that completely cover the car, dirt and silt over the roof, complete brownout. All terrains, everything you can do, we put this car through it. There are many things that we felt that the car did very, very well. There are a few things that we didn't like. We're going to break down both the pros and the cons for you right now. The one thing that we were constantly aware of with the car is its drivability and ride quality. Compared to other cars that are brand new, stock, untouched UTVs, this car rides amazing. It is extremely plush. You're not going to get abused. You can drive it for hours on end without having any issues. As a matter of fact, we drove the car for 12 to 14 hours a day, stopping only for lunch and fuel. At the end of the day, we weren't abused, we weren't worn out. We could get up the next morning and do another 12 hours. So that comfort factor, due to spring selection, due to geometry and overall design of how the rear of the car works and how the front of the car works, was spot on. So just to give you a little bit of context, in our pre-run we had cars that were full tilt number plated race cars. We had pre-runners, we had turbo, non-turbo versions, long travel cars in our pre-run. All of us were running a very quick pace. The winner in this last 500 won with a 37 mile an hour average. Our pre-run pace was 38.5 miles an hour. We had some highway sections that ran that up a little bit, so you could easily say that we were probably running 36 or 37 mile an hour average on our pre-run. It's absolutely not slow. This car could keep up with everything in our pack. We never had to wait for it, no matter who was driving, and we actually let everybody take turns so we could get multiple opinions on the car. So that brings up the next item on our positive list, and that's the power. Now, in the dirt, with this tire, the car had excellent power, great throttle response. It was very snappy, especially from 0 to 45 miles an hour. The only thing we had a little bit of an issue is the governor in the car would shut it off at 75 miles an hour, and sometimes we wanted a little bit more. But as long as we were in the desert with a little bit of a hard pack, the car had plenty. We never really wanted more. That also has to be coupled with good brakes, and the car has excellent brakes. Never had fade. We were on it hard. It would lock up the tires at any moment if you actually wanted to. The brakes were easy to feel. You knew when they were coming in. You could enter a corner and exit a corner with brake feel and throttle both at the same time. Another item that's a huge benefit in this car is how the front end feels when driving. The steering wheel feel is the right amount of road feel, so you know what the car is doing. You can counter steer it if it's sideways. You can get a feel for the car through the steering wheel. But at the same time, it has excellent power assist, enough to where you could drive the car with one hand, not two in a death grip. You could run through all the whoops that you wanted without any kickback or feedback. If you were turning the car in a corner and snap a big boulder at the same time, most UTVs would try to rip the wheel right out of your hand. Not in this car. It's solid, and it's one of the most important things we felt it was a positive with driving the car. As we touched upon on our unboxing of the car, we pointed out a few of the items on the car that were extremely strong. Front end support, bushings, large hardware, roll cage, X bracing, just to mention a few. But we actually had a moment where we could actually test that. So on our pre-run, we were having multiple people drive the car, and one of the guys was running down a section that had 2 to 3 foot rain ruts right down the middle, dropped a rear tire into it, hooked the tire, threw the car forward, and rolled the car across the back. The only thing that we did to the car at that moment, flip it right back over, pull the negative on the battery, reset all the warning lights, fired it up, and drove it. The roll cage on this car is still perfect. It just has scratches on it, nothing's moved. So that's an extremely good testament to the strength in this car. We proved it. Another testament to strength is how the car held up from a suspension standpoint. Normally, these cars are worn out after 500 to 1,000 miles. But this car came back, we jacked up the front, grabbed the tire and shook it. Every single control arm bushing, every single ball joint, every other point that normally would wear out on a standard UTV shake like crazy, oblong holes, and we'd have to go back through and change all the hardware bushings and tighten everything. On this car, no issue. It's tight as a drum, just like the day we received the car. There's no clunks, there's no rattles in this car. That's not typical. Most cars are going to come back worn out after 1,000 miles in Baja. Something else to consider as a positive that most people are never going to notice is CV temperatures. Most of the race teams have problems overheating CVs, and this has a lot to do with geometry in the back and how far the rear arm is kicked back behind the CV, or what the CV and axle angle is at ride height. Both contribute to temp. Overheating the system, melt boots, melt CV grease, and destroy the whole system. In this car, we actually temp gunned the rear just to see where they would run. We never saw a temperature over 135 degrees. Typical race car temps, 180 to 240 degrees. At 280 to 300, you start losing CVs. We were pleasantly surprised to see that. That means that the whole system in the back, from a drivetrain and CV standpoint, is going to live forever for the average person and how they drive. Unfortunately, that ties us in to some of the negatives that we found with the car, and those things are the stock CV boots. Within 40 miles, we lost one of the inner rear CV boots on the car, and we assumed that we might have thrown a bush or a rock or something up in there and cut it. So we just took a minute and kind of taped it up, duct tape, and some other items, and continued on our pre-run. Well, about 40 miles later, we lost the other inner. So not 100% sure as to why we lost both inner boots, but that allowed us to kind of pay attention to the CVs and make sure we had enough grease in them. And the thing that we found throughout that whole process, at least for the next 600 miles, was that the CVs ran cold. The grease stayed in the CV. It didn't get liquefied and leave the system. We were able to run the whole rest of the pre-run with duct tape CV boots. So even though that's a negative, it's pretty impressive that duct tape lived for as long as it did. Rear axle plunge is something that's known to be an issue with the new Wildcat. Now, Textron has issued fixes and recalls to cure it, and we know that those exist, and we didn't have any issues with plunge once we addressed those. But with full disclosure, we did have an axle pull out of the car within the first 3 to 4 miles of driving and testing here at the shop before we went out to Baja. We don't know exactly what caused it. The only thing that we did was remove it, put a brand new axle in it, set our plunge, lock the system, and we had zero issues the rest of the time that we drove this car. So it happened to us, it's happened to a lot of people. I think that as long as the dealerships and others check this on a routine basis and Textron gets up to speed with their production, we won't have any issues like this in the future, and it's probably not something to worry about. Something else to consider is the power in the car is actually exceptional and very snappy and easy to drive in the desert. Certainly in our pre-run, it was able to keep up with every other car that we had on the pre-run. But the one thing that we didn't like is that the car's governed down to 75 miles an hour. And in Baja, there are a lot of times where we could have gone 80, 85, or 90 miles an hour if the car would have let us. We feel like the power is there for it. We just wish that maybe they had set the governor a little bit higher. Along the cosmetic subject, we like the look of the car, and we really enjoy the dual handles in the doors. Also, all the body panels are tight. We didn't have any rattles to speak of while we were running the car. The bed section that allows us to put a spare tire in the car and tools we used, had a flat, changed it, but that leads to the front fenders. The fenders are actually very functional in Baja. Going through water, they completely stop all the water from coming in the car. That was very nice. In silt beds, they actually knock down the silt at least 50 to 80%, where normally it would be in your face. It would actually knock it down and direct it to the side. The one thing that we think that the fenders are going to be a problem with is duning. If you're a sand duner, then the fenders are high enough to where you're not going to be able to see over the corner when you're cresting from dune to dune. This is the same problem that guys have when they try to dune trucks and look over the hood. It's about the only issue that we think is going on with the body. Our final concern with the car is suspension. Now, if you're going fairly slow or you're on trails, mountain, or rock crawling, the thing is spot on. It's extremely plush. You're not going to be abused. You get into the whoops, 1 foot, 2 foot whoops, it does an excellent job of it. The compression and rebound is nailed on this car through the whoops. The only issue that we find is if you drive the car hard enough and it is strong enough to be driven hard, you'll find out that you can drive the car past what the shock is capable of doing. You can bottom it out fairly easy. Now, that's on the lightest setting, the mid setting. If you turn it all the way to the stiffest setting, then all of a sudden the plush ride goes away. It's a lot harder to bottom out, but you sacrifice a lot. During our pre-run, we found that we could run the car in the middle setting or on the high setting for the majority of that trip and not have much for bottoming out, but we had to tailor our driving a little bit slower. If we drive the car to its capability, it needs to have a better bump stage so that you don't have any bottoming issues with the car. So we are very excited about what this car is capable of doing. Having driven it the mileage that we have and all of the terrains that we have, it does an amazing job for most of it. Some of the things that we want to improve upon are basically exactly what we do for a living. It's going to be suspension and handling. So with all the positive things and negative things out on the table, if you were to take our axle issue and our CV boot issue and the soft suspension off the table, this car was amazing. It finished the whole pre-run. It came back with not one item loose, not one problem, and most UTVs just will not do that. We feel that the most important items to address would be the shock, spring, and anti-sway bar package on the car. Now obviously that's what we do, but if we can get the proper bump stage built into this system without sacrificing any of the plush ride, also addressing body roll in the corner so that you have an adjustable system that allows you to run higher speeds, we feel that you could actually drive the car to its strength potential. It has a ton of strength, which means its speed and potential is also very, very high. If the shock and spring package match its capabilities, you're going to see amazing things from this car. And the few other items that we had issues with are being addressed or have already been addressed by Textron. Also, there'll be aftermarket options for these things very soon, so you could do anything you want with the car, from long travel, stronger axle, stronger CV, different shock packages. All of these things are coming. So you're going to have a huge amount of choice on how you can make this car better. It's going to be amazing once that's done. So where does this car fall on the market, and what should you actually compare it to? The accurate comparison should be with a Polaris XP 1000 and a Can-Am X3 900HO. All of these cars are normally aspirated and non-turbo. They're all fairly narrow and they're all fairly short as far as wheelbase is concerned. When you compare all three, the Wildcat XX is faster than those in a drag race. It has much stronger components, which creates longevity. And out of the three, this car would require the least amount of work to become the most amazing ride quality of the batch. So who is this car made for? Who is the best person for this car? If you love the mountains and trails, then this car is spot on for you. Its plush ride, narrow width, short wheelbase is a perfect fit. If you're looking to buy a car and do absolutely nothing to it, then this is the perfect car for you. Its longevity is second to none. You'll be able to run all terrains in a relaxed pace, super plush. But if you're looking to buy a car and run it much harder, accessorize it a little bit, if you just throw a spring, shock valving, and sway bar on this car, it will outperform every other normally aspirated car in the market. You can expect to see some of the accessories and products that we make for this car coming out very soon. Internal shock work and spring kits will be available in July 2018. You'll see adjustable sway bars, both front and rear, in August. If there's anything else you'd like to ask us about this car, please leave it in the comments down below. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out our website, shocktherapist.com, for all of our new products coming out for the Wildcat XX. Bad kitty.
Bad kitty breakdown. Take one.
Meow. He loves that. I do this. Every time I start, right there. So I do my own bad kitty clap. This is the video that everybody's been waiting for. It's our breakdown. No, God, it's a review.
Say we're gonna outweigh the pros and the cons right now.
Okay. Outweigh?
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
So, yes.
You, what the cameraman with a phone?
Everyone's fired.
Let's go into the rolling and the strength of the cage, and then maybe you can edit me going into the front end and strength of all the parts, because after the fact there's nothing loose on this car.
Okay.
There's not a squeak on it. It doesn't rattle, doesn't do shit.
Okay.
I can't say it, but if we went and took a brand new or a did that, we'd come back, jack it up, and take the tire and shake it, and all the arms would go duk, 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 and all the arm bushings it would be all over the place loose. The thing is tight.
That's awesome.
You know, Mike, one of our race prep drivers, decided to test the cage, and we were sincerely impressed, and we kind of explained to him what happened.
All right, I'll do something completely opposite of what you said. I
Exactly.
forgot what you started with, so.
I started with
So on our pre-run, about 400 miles in, again, we are having multiple people, damn it. It's tight as a drum, just the day as we bought it. It's tight as a drum, just like the day we bought it from the showroom. Nope. It's tight as a drum, right?
It's tight as a bum.
And so that forced us to make our own CV boots. Did you see those?
That's a nice boot.
Fucking sweet.
450 miles, bro. We used, had a flat, changed it, and up, had a flat and changed it, and then some of the things that we want to improve upon are basically exactly what we do for a living. It's going to be suspension and handling.
Start it over, do it again.
Yeah.
Don't touch my microphone, guys.
What?
Yeah, hey, stop.
So all of this leads to, so all of this leads us to who should buy this car. If you are a mountain or trail person, this is,
And
so who is this car made for? If you are a trail or mountain person, then this is, it sounds like Appalachian person, you know, or like, you know, mountain people.